Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Blissed? Dr. Shealy, are you blissed?
Yes.
Yeah, me too. Hey, Dr. Shealy, it's great to hear your voice.
Well, thank you, Vince. By the way, my last trip of the year is next Wednesday. Hello?
Do you want me to write you a note? You want to make it, would you rather make it Thursday?
Well, I'll be out of town Thursday.
Next Wednesday?
I could have done Tuesday, but at any rate, unfortunately, I'm going to Switzerland.
Well, that sounds like a fun trip.
Yeah, it's the
Are you going to be speaking
Congress, but, you know, Sergey and I are going.
Mm-hmm. Will you be, are you going to be speaking there?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's what. So, can you share with us what this adventure is going to be about, or is that something you cannot do?
Well, no, I can share. I mean, it's a big group of physicians who work with pain in Switzerland itself, and so I've been asked to be part of the faculty, and I'll be talking about my favorite things like adrenoscalar and hemp with a cap, and of course biogenics.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, that sounds really, really neat. And Dr. Shealy, will you be talking about the TENS unit as well?
Well, I'll mention it, of course, because I mean it is one of the foundations of modern pain management. But I think, you know, even though it's still useful, I think it alone is not adequate for a lot of people. And the reason for that is that pain is not just a physical thing. Pain is always a general electrical, brain, body, mind, spirit experience.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm really excited about the Sapphire Enhanced Adrenomedulin device that you and Lou Cassidy have come up with. I think it's absolutely fabulous, and each time I put it against my chest, I can't get over the virtual
Watch your
immediate
language
results.
now. I'm teasing on it because get over it and use it.
Well, no, I'm teasing. What I'm saying, Dr. Shealy, is it is astounding how quickly this works. And I'm wondering, when you talk about this, are you going to be sharing any of the the anecdotal comments that we've made on this broadcast about that particular device that you and yeah.
Oh yes, no question.
I think it's absolutely incredible. As a matter of fact, I was on the telephone last night with one of our instructors, and I was telling him about this device. And the conversation went on for about 10 minutes about my experiences with this. And let me just describe it for those new to the class. Think of it like a picture frame, except without a frame. So it's got two pieces of clear plexiglass, and inside is an antenna, 4 antenna arrays, or an array of 4 antennas, and a device that lets them or uses them to transmit. And there's a phase shifting that goes on with this, and some timers that go on with this. and frequency sweeping, if I understand it correctly, and the wavelengths cancel each other out at some point. And what happens is it has an immediate effect on the body. And in my case, my respiratory system was the capacity was reduced. And I was coughing, and at times coughing up blood. And this went on for close to a couple of years. And with this device, in addition to some other therapies, I'm getting what I would consider darn close to miraculous improvement. And, for a while, I was being treated with antibiotics and steroids, and they sort of worked, but then the symptoms would come back, and more antibiotics and steroids, and that would work, and then the symptoms would come back. But with the therapies that I'm doing, which include your youth formula, which is vitamin C plus MSM, oil of oregano, colloidal silver, and eating well, Greek yogurt, probiotics. I'm trying to think of some of these other things that I'm doing. Cinnamon.
Several IVs of vitamin C.
Yeah, and then the Myers cocktail. Yeah. Putting all that together, I think I'm one of the very few people who is actually improving with this lung problem, because there are some farmers around here who have the same kind of thing, except they're on oxygen. They're going the wrong way. And me, I'm on the scaffold. I'm on heavy equipment. I'm taking pretty long trips in the truck. I'm doing farm work, which is it's not heavy and it's not light, but put me back a year ago, and lifting a 5-pound bag of sugar would be like a real challenge. If I were to lift a 5-pound bag of sugar, I mean that kind of something as simple as that someone might do like that, or 5 pounds of potatoes or whatever it might be, that would have been really difficult. Now, I'm literally up on scaffolding, working on the farm. So, yeah, what I'm saying is it's working. It's absolutely working, and I can't wait for the results of your test, which includes looking at telomeres for several of us. Well, about 10 of us, right, Dr. Shealy? Is that about the size of the...
Right, 5 couples.
Mm-hmm. And can you explain this
and of course,
this study?
I haven't gotten back to the baseline yet that was just drawn last week, but I should get it maybe before I leave for Switzerland, hopefully. Okay.
Can you share with us how this study will work for those that are who are new to the class, and what you might anticipate?
Tips of your DNA. They're almost like an eraser on a pencil, and they allow the DNA in any given cell to actually reproduce the cell. Throughout life, different organs have different lifespans. Like the skin cells may reappear, if you will, or be reborn within a week or less. The brain may take 7 years, but every cell has a wear out, and it dies and is replaced as long as you're healthy. Now, ordinarily, the telomeres you're born with are, of course, your genetic endowment, and there's a little variation in there. But even if you've got the very best of health habits, they will shrink an average of 1% every year of life, so that sooner or later, you don't have any ability to reproduce cells anymore, and that's when you die. Now, the average American dies at age 78 because of poor health habits. So if you just had good health habits, average age would go up over a period of time to 100 years of age average. So telomeres are measured both in the two major lines of white blood cells in the bloodstream, the granulocytes and the lymphocytes. And the average between those two is a reflection of where you are. Now, I started working with this actually 11 years ago because I believed that we could regenerate the telomeres rather than have them shrink every year. And I have proven that. That is, if you lie for an hour a day, a minimum of 5 days a week, on a mattress that has human DNA frequency in it, 52 to 78 billion cycles a second, your telomeres will grow or regenerate 3.5%, which is 4.5% better than average. Now, that takes an hour a day, and you can't roll up the mattress and take it with you very easily. So 6 years ago, I converted to using 3 of the bliss oils, that is fire, earth, and crystal. And it turns out that using those 3 will regenerate your telomeres 3.5%. I tried 1 year with all 5 of the bliss oils. Didn't make any difference, so we only use for the telomere regrowth the fire, earth, and crystal. Now, I believe because of its remarkable ability to decrease inflammation, decrease free radicals, to reduce adrenomedullin, the major stress hormone, that exposure every night for a year will help your telomeres regenerate. The nice thing about that is you can have one of these, about 10 by 12 sized devices in your bedroom, because it fills the whole room with this sapphire enhanced scalar energy. And I believe that over a year's period, they will regenerate telomeres at least as well as the other 2 techniques we've learned. Obviously, it takes a full year to prove that. And so we draw blood, send it off to Repeat Diagnostics in Vancouver. It's the only accurate lab. There are 3 labs in this country that do report measuring telomeres. I've tested them, and it's a waste of money and blood. Repeat Diagnostics is the one I've used for 11 years. It is excellent. I have no financial interest in it, but it's the best. And it takes up to 2 weeks, 10 to 14 days to get the results back on the blood test. And so then, after you and Sandy have had it in your bedroom for a year, we will remeasure your blood for telomeres. So approximately 1 year from now, we'll have the answer to you and 4 other couples as to whether just being exposed to scalar energy while you're sleeping does the same thing, and it has all kinds of other health benefits as well.
Yeah. Dr. Shealy and I'll be right back. NormShealy.com. Dr. Norman Shealy is with us, medical doctor. Dr. Shealy, I've noticed something. I was talking with one of our instructors last night about this, that the world is becoming more chaotic, more out of balance. I mean, really, really out of balance. And here's a symptom that I'm noticing. I just clicked over to Facebook, and I was looking at this image of that I could click on, people that want to be Facebook friends with me here at USA Prepares. And so I clicked on this one guy's image, and people put the most ridiculous things on Facebook. And his message is, terrorist, you'll be on notice. And then it goes on to say, this is what happens when you blank with the USA. Now, he uses profanity there. Now, that turned me off immediately. So here's a guy who we have almost 1,000 Facebook friends in common, but he couldn't resist using profanity. So because of that, I am not going to confirm his request to be a friend of this broadcast. Now, what I've noticed, Dr. Shealy, is more and more people are publicly using profanity in the extreme. And who am I talking about? I'm talking about actors, actresses, politicians, people in the public eye. They use profanity as if it's normal. And maybe if we keep hearing more and more profanity, it will become normal. Are you seeing this in your circles as well?
Oh, yeah. I believe that I think it was really created by 9/11. That is it being the beginning of chaos. Before that, but it was about that time that suddenly I had the feeling of increasing daily almost chaos. And here we are, whatever it is, 16 years later, and it isn't getting any better.
Mm-hmm. And I seem to sense in people's communication, the way they communicate with others, a sense of despair, a sense of anger. I mean, it's a lot of emotions all put together that are negative in almost all respects. And I don't remember that in the 1960s. I remember the outlook being bright and sunny. But now, no matter what you talk about, it's pretty negative. I don't mean you. I mean, in general, when people talk about things, there's so many. I mean, how do you talk about health without talking about people who are dying around you of these horrific diseases? How do you talk about the economy and say, boy, things are really bright, you know, this is great? How do you talk about finance with it without talking about people who are having trouble making ends meet? How do you talk about school without talking about some of the ridiculous things that children are learning instead of the important things? But
how do you talk about guns without talking about those who are criminally insane?
Yes, and there are a lot more of us with guns that are not insane.
Oh, yeah. No, I brought that up only because of the recent incident.
Yeah. And if you... Well, that's all part of what I'm saying, Dr. Shealy. I'm glad you mentioned that, because it seems like people are quick at the figurative trigger to lose their tempers. And how does someone go in to a church and just start squeezing off that trigger, and if babies are crying, they get shot first? How does someone do that? How does some young schoolboy...
as severe a psychosis as can exist. Now, the reason they can do that is, interestingly, we do know that such a person has, among other things, no oxytocin.
Yeah, please explain that for those new to the class, Dr. Shealy, what you mean by that.
Oxytocin is the nurturing, bonding, love hormone. And it is critical that you get a large dose of it throughout pregnancy, but especially during the time of delivery of the baby and for the first 7 years of life. So the first 7 years and 9 months of life, and to me life begins with conception, is the time when your entire brain body are conditioned to be nurtured. And if you're not nurtured, or if you're abused, which is the opposite of nurturing, you lose the ability to make oxytocin, and it makes you depressed, angry.
Hold that thought, Dr. Shealy. We just went into a break. Hold that thought. Dr. Norman Shealy's with us, class, medical doctor, and we're talking about things that are wrong with people. And Dr. Shealy is explaining the relationship with the low oxytocin and bad behavior. Dr. Shealy, can you, we got cut off during that commercial, please continue about low oxytocin.
We now know that every known psychological, emotional, and physical disorder is associated with low oxytocin, with one exception. The extreme people who love only themselves, the true, I'm the only one in the world psychopath. But other psychopaths, the murderers, etc., they have low oxytocin. The self-centered, God, I am God group of psychopaths believe that they're the only person in the world. And they actually overproduce oxytocin. But every other known disease, from heart disease, cancer, diabetes, and all of the psychological emotional disorders, even schizophrenia, are associated with low levels of oxytocin. And there are studies that show that intranasal sprays of oxytocin done up to 3 or 4 times a day will help better than any drug in the world. Of course, no drugs are any good anyway for most anything, but especially for psychological disorders. On the other hand, nobody's done it for even a year, and I can't imagine that you could spray anything into your nose 3 or 4 times a day and not wind up with some kind of problem with the nasal mucosa. So we now know that using Air Bliss does work in 80% of people. Now, of course, nothing works in 100%. Always say you have to go to the Supreme Court to decide whether you're dead or alive. But 80% of people respond well with anxiety, depression, and it can be of help in other ways as well, because it does raise oxytocin. And so the murderer in Texas this past weekend had to have, I would imagine, no oxytocin. But he's been crazy for a long time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. As you mentioned this, I was thinking about some of these sexual predators that we've been hearing more and more about, like Harvey Weinstein, Anthony Weiner, a Congress critter, Anthony Weiner, and the actor Kevin Spacey. Then we find out that there are some individuals in Scotland Yard who are predators, and then we know, we've talked about this for years, the police have their individuals within the police who are sexual predators as well. Dr. Shealy, are these more examples of low oxytocin?
Yes, no question about it. They are craving what they can't get naturally, excess attention, especially sexual. And so they tend to be low in oxytocin, but they're not going to get the boost they really need, because anytime you're doing something that at some level of your mind is harming another person, you're not going to get the benefit of it.
And I'm thinking about Anthony Weiner, former Congressman Anthony Weiner, for example. Here's a guy who's preying on at least one young girl. I mean, what is he possibly thinking? And then you go to Harvey Weinstein, and he's chasing women around with his pants unzipped. I mean, these are people he hardly knows, right? Or has spent much time with, and he's chasing them around. What could he possibly be thinking? And then Kevin Spacey, allegedly
the opera word. He thinks.
Right. Geez. And I was thinking about some of these situations, and I can tell you if I had a daughter who was approached by a Harvey Weinstein, I don't think that interaction with me would be all that pleasant.
That might be a place where you would use the gun for one specific part of the body, not to kill them, just to cut them off.
Yeah, and boy, I can't advocate violence on this broadcast, okay? And I can't even say that I would do what you just mentioned. I'll say that, it might enter my mind, but, heck, I can't say that I would do that. But I don't understand why some of the fathers and some of the husbands and some of the boyfriends of these women who are abused by these perverts, by these psychopaths, by these degenerates, just haven't, gone out for baseball practice with these guys. I mean, I don't get it. I really don't understand why they are allowed to just continue day after day abusing people. I just don't understand it. Now, I'm not advocating violence. I'm just saying I don't understand why.
Look at the other extreme of that kind of aberrant and less being kind behavior. Catholic priests and others, because they're certainly not exclusive there, who abuse young boys.
Yep.
I mean, again, this is a perversion. That's the kindest thing you can say about it. It is not normal human behavior.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Shealy, I don't know if I ever mentioned this to you, but I believe you know that I went to an institution where I was taught by the Jesuits,
Right.
and almost all males. There were a couple of females in the school, but these guys wore black robes and collar tabs, white collar tabs, and it was like 30-something years after graduation. I happened to be in the vicinity of one of my boyhood friends, and I guess you could say that. And it's just a couple guys that were friends. It was nothing more than that. Okay. As a matter of fact, you could even use the term boyfriend. When I was growing up, I had some boyfriends, and it didn't mean that we were all homos. It just meant that they were boys, I was a boy, and we were friends. Simple as that. Well, one of my boyhood friends happened to be in this particular area I was traveling through, and I decided he had a business, and it was an easy to find business. So I looked up the number, called him up on the phone, and he said, "Hey, come on over. Love to chat with you." So we were at his business, and he leaned across the desk. He said, "Hey, Vinny, did brother so-and-so ever come after you?" I said, No. He said, "Oh, man. Oh,
Interesting term. Connect.
No." And he said, "Oh, yeah." Well, he said he was really scared because this particular brother, this Jesuit brother, approached him and came after him, and he just said he took off. And he got away, so without any interaction. But he was very, very concerned at that time, and probably it must have made an impression on him because he's talking about it way over 30 years later.
Right.
So, do those things happen? Yeah, I'm pretty sure they do. I'm pretty darn sure they do. It hasn't happened to me, but young people are impressionable. And you have these figures of power. Now, would a Jesuit instructor, in uniform, be a figure of power? Sure, absolutely. And are freshmen in high school impressionable? Sure. So I hear what you're saying, and I have no disagreement, Dr. Shealy. Fortunately for me, none of that happened. But I can imagine being scarred for life as a result of that kind of abuse from a sexual predator.
Well, again, whether you're a sexual predator, a robber, anytime you harm people, you are sick. Anybody who purposefully harms another person any way whatsoever, they're psychologically sick, damaged, and they have poor self-esteem.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. When I don't know if I've ever told you this, Dr. Shealy, but when we first moved to Missouri, I was talking with one of our neighbors. Now, not a close neighbor, but maybe a mile and a half away. And this particular guy, I heard of his reputation. And his reputation was one of being a thief. So he was known as the area thief. Now, some people say his reputation far exceeded his abilities, meaning he was reported to be more of a thief than he actually was. I don't know if that's the case or not. But what I've heard of this particular individual is that he would go and steal things. He would break into people's homes when they weren't there, and he would take things that he considered of value. He didn't have any particular job or means of, supporting himself and his family that I knew of, but he seemed like he was a fairly spry, agile, relatively healthy, 30-plus-year-old guy. Well, he said to me, and this is when I first met him. I mean, within minutes of meeting him. And I was new to the area, and people really didn't know much about me. I'd only been here a couple of weeks. And he said, "So, what would you do if you found someone in your house?" And I said, "I'd shoot him." And he was... and he was kind of taken aback by that. And I said, yeah. And I said very calmly that, because I assume you mean in my house at night, uninvited, and there'd be a threat of death or severe body damage to me and my family. That's what I assume you mean. And yeah, I'd shoot him. And he was, I think that set him back on his heels a little bit, to the point where nothing was taken from our property before or after that. But our neighbors can't say the same thing. They did have some items stolen from them, but not us. Dr. Norman Shealy is with us, class. If you'd like to go to his website and get some of those Bliss oils or the Youth Formula, or if you'd like to sign up for the free newsletter, normshealy.com, NORMSHEALY.com. Dr. Shealy, during the commercial announcements, I was just looking at the news, and this really doesn't have anything to do with medicine, but it just shows just one little piece of anecdotal evidence about how poorly our children are probably being educated. Now, here's what happened. So this 25-year-old female teacher has a problem with her car. It looks like it's been in an accident. And the insurance company says, please send us photos of the front and side profile. Okay. So what this girl does is she takes a picture of herself standing so you can see the front of the girl. It's just this girl. And then she turns to the side, takes another picture of her at her side, and then at her other side. So instead of taking a picture of the vehicle, which was damaged in the accident, she takes a picture of herself. Dr. Shealy.
That sounds like a millennial.
Yes, it is. She's a millennial. She's 25 years old. 3 pictures. And, the insurance agent says, appreciate it, but we need the vehicle. And I can't imagine ever making that mistake. I can't imagine thinking that my insurance company would want pictures of me. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. But that's what we're dealing with. And my son, I heard him say it last night. I just overheard him in the kitchen. He said, these are the guys who are going to be pushing the wheelchairs around for us. Gosh. I mean, how does somebody make a mistake like that? Now, she's a teacher. We've entrusted her, somebody's entrusted her with the education of younger people, younger than 25. Wow. Okay, so I just wanted to share that. What a mess. Oil of oregano, Dr. Shealy. Now, for many, many years, Mrs. Finelli, before she heard from you about D3, she would take oil of oregano on, let's say a cracker or something where she could kind of chew it and keep it in her mouth for a minute or so, 30 seconds to a minute, and swish it around with saliva. And she swears that it absolutely, positively has a positive effect in stopping the sniffles, the sneezes, the oncoming of a cold or something like that. What are your thoughts about that, Dr. Shealy?
Well, I certainly have heard of that, and I don't have any personal experience with it because, at least for the last 12-plus years, I've been on a large dose of vitamin D, and so I don't have, I'm knocking wood, because I haven't had a viral infection during that time.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, Dr. Shealy, you mentioned... okay. You mentioned vitamin D. Now, I was talking with a young man, probably 23, 24, maybe 25 years old, recently. He was at the farm, and I said to him, we're at the kitchen table, and I said, hey, when you were younger, do you remember your parents saying, hey, go out and get some vitamin D. Go outside and get some vitamin D. Go out and get some sunshine. He said, no. Now, I can't think of a single person when I was growing up, back in the 50s or 60s, who hasn't heard of that expression, right?
Right.
Go get some sunshine. Isn't that what we did? That's what we did. And I think there's something amiss. Now, this is a very small sample size of 1. But, class, children need sunshine. Children need sunshine. And for their development. Dr. Shealy and I will be right back after top of the hour news and commercial announcements. I'd like to talk about the color of light. The color of light and what effect that has on the human body, as well as other things. We'll be right back. Everyone all set? Cocked, locked, blissed? Hour number 2 of USA Prepares. Dr. Shealy, I just want to share with our class a really pleasant experience that I had. I happened to be at your clinic a couple of weeks ago. And I was telling the ladies who work with you about the experiences that I've had with the sapphire enhanced adrenomedullin device, and I was saying, this is unbelievable. This is really great. Here's how it works, and I was talking about it. And there was a gentleman who was in the scalar room who kind of popped his head out. And he was listening to this conversation, and he kind of joined in, and then he came over and he shook my hand, and he said, "I'm glad to meet you." And I was a little embarrassed because I was trying to think, how come I don't remember this person? You know, he seems to know who I am, and yet I don't remember meeting him. And I felt, really embarrassed. And so, the conversation went on, and I asked him, he said, he listens to, I asked him, so how did you hear about, the scalar energy? And he said, well, I listen to you every day on the radio. I said, where are you from? He said, Wisconsin. And his name is Scott. And so Scott traveled from Wisconsin because he heard you and me talking about, the Myers cocktails, the scalar energy, and so forth. And he was so interested in what we were saying. I believe he drove from Wisconsin to Missouri with another member of his family to visit you. And it was such a great experience. It was so heartwarming, and so I was really glad to have had a chance to meet him. He seemed so positive, so energetic, so enthusiastic. It was just a wonderful, wonderful experience, and I just wanted to share that with you, Dr. Shealy.
What's interesting, Vince, he and his wife were here for a week, and I said to them more than once, but especially on the last day, that truly both of them are the most positive patients I've ever seen in my life. They are just what everybody should be. And so it was a great pleasure to work with them.
My schedule didn't accommodate this, but and I don't go out to eat very often, but I was thinking, boy, I kept thinking for all that day and the next couple of days, I would have loved to have had a chance to take him out for a bite to eat and just, thank him for being part of our broadcast classroom. I didn't have that opportunity. My schedule wasn't working out quite for that to happen, but I would have loved to have done that. So, Scott, if you're in class today, and if you ever come in this way, I'd love to see you and your wife and Dr. Shealy and all of us. And if we have a chance, that maybe we could just grab a bite or just a cup of coffee or just sit and chat, whatever. I'd love to do it. But it was such a wonderful, wonderful experience. That's kind of one of the things that you remember for years, Dr. Shealy. At least I will. So I wanted to thank you for taking such great care of them, and they were so enthusiastic. Dr. Shealy, when I was in California with Bert Bertonis, who was another one of our instructors, we determined, this was back in 1980, we determined that humans need light. And this is way before I met you. And those who, get more light seem to have a more positive outlook. And we looked at light and thought that, okay, not only do we need light, we need the right spectrum of light. And we were in this building, had lots of fluorescent lighting, as most commercial buildings did at the time and still do. And so in our conference room, we put in full spectrum fluorescent lighting, fluorescent lights, which was way more expensive than the regular fluorescent tube. It still was not a lot of money. Might have been a total of $50 or more than regular fluorescent tubes to light up the whole conference room. But we did it because we thought it was that important. Can you share with us your thoughts on the color of lighting, what light, what spectrum you think is important, or were we wrong about this?
No, you were absolutely right. And of course, that was not terribly long after John Ott, O-T-T, wrote his book about light, and he was probably the single greatest force in the education of people to the effect of what he called full spectrum light. In other words, sunlight is full spectrum. Light is divided into different frequencies, and in the sunlight you have all of the frequencies in the most balanced form. And actually, I think I bought my first Ott light somewhere in the late 70s. And I agree. And it's interesting. Here I sit in this office that we've just been in for 2 years, and I looked up at the fluorescent tubes, and I'm going to change them all to full spectrum.
Well, here's what we were thinking. Here's what went into our thought process. If we were doing a design that we thought was important, we didn't have a lot of money back then, and so every cent that we spent was carefully placed. And we thought that if we were doing some design work, that we probably ought to have the benefit of the best lighting we could have to improve our moods. And when customers came to buy our product, which was satellite communications equipment, we wanted them to feel good. We didn't want them to feel anything but at their very best, where they could carefully make decisions, get to select the right products, and feel good about the environment. And that's why we did it. And it seemed to work. It really. Now we're not talking about, hey, he wants a green suit, so turn on the green light. No, we're not talking about deception. We're talking about, we wanted full disclosure, and we wanted our customers to be at their peak when they made their decisions, and we wanted them to feel positive. And that's why we did it. It was not about trickery. It was about letting the human body perform at its optimum. That's why we did what we did. And it seemed to work for us. What about blue light, Dr. Shealy? Because I was reading a post last night, and the author is saying that, in the bedroom there are some common things that we do wrong. So, for example, too much light. When people are sleeping, you shouldn't have too much light. And blue light is a bad thing. Blue light. That would be like light from a television, right, or a computer screen. That blue type of lighting. What are your thoughts on that, Dr. Shealy? Blue light.
Well, that's true. As a matter of fact, there have been some evidence that some of the so-called LED lights that are replacing incandescent put out an excess of blue light, which is not good for you.
Mm-hmm. And this post is also talking about having too much electromagnetic stress in the room. Now, there's
two things that are important here. Any amount of electromagnetic, artificial, if you will, electromagnetic stuff from the wall close to your head is not good for you. It interferes with good sleep. So you shouldn't have any radio, clock, anything like that plugged in if it's within 3 feet of your head. And the evidence is overwhelming that all colors of light reduce your production of melatonin except red. So if you're going to have a clock in your bedroom, it should have a red light on it. It's the only one that does not.
And ours does.
Yeah, it's the only one that does not keep you from sleeping adequately.
And that's what we have in our bedroom. It's got to be darn close to an antique. It's got to be easily 20 years old, and it's a Sony clock radio, AM and FM, and it has a digital display, which is a red LED display. So that's the clock, and it's across the room. It's maybe 13, 14 feet away. So that's what we do. Dr. Shealy, I was reading about another article that says that dementia, this is from the telegraph.co.uk, dementia is now Britain's biggest killer. That's the headline. Overtaking heart disease for the first time. It goes on to say that dementia is now Britain's biggest killer, overtaking heart disease for the first time, new figures have shown. It talks about people dying, some 70,000 people have died from Alzheimer's disease and dementia last year, compared to 66,000 deaths from heart disease. And it goes on to say that the switch is being driven by the aging British population combined with improvements in heart health as more people are prescribed statins and beta blockers to cope with high cholesterol and high blood pressure. So they're saying that because people are having or treating heart disease with beta blockers and statins, that they are doing better with their hearts, and now Alzheimer's and dementia are taking the spot as the number one killer.
Interestingly, of course, probably the number one cause of increased dementia is statin drugs. Therefore, I question those statistics.
It's working.
Yeah,
yes.
it is converting them. I wouldn't take a statin drug for any amount of money in the world.
Okay. Can you hold that thought, and let's talk more about this when we come back. We're talking about dementia, Alzheimer's, statin drugs. And according to this article, dementia is a loose term used to describe different degenerative disorders that trigger a gradual loss of brain function, including memory loss, thinking speed, mental agility, language, understanding, and judgment. And it says that Alzheimer's is the most common type of dementia. Who gets it? 1 in 3 people over 65 will develop dementia, and 2/3 of people with dementia are women. And then it says, is there a cure? Most types of dementia cannot be cured, but if detected early, there are ways to slow down and maintain mental function. Dr. Shealy, you're talking about that and statins.
Well, the pharmaca mafia owns the FDA, as we all know. And so, but they have issued a warning that statin drugs may cause, quote, loss of memory, which is an aphorism for dementia. And my experience is I have seen scores of people who come in and complain of memory, and the first thing I ask is, are you on a statin drug? And almost always they are. And I say, well, if you wish to live a long time and have your brain function, you better get off the statin drug right away.
Mm-hmm. Now, if a person is on a statin drug, do they wean themselves off? Is that what you recommend?
Well, I do it over a 2-week period. I switch them to lecithin granules, to heaping tablespoons twice a day, and TMG, or trimethylglycine, 2,000 milligrams with each meal, unless they're very small ones, I may go to a smaller dose. But TMG plus lecithin are the single best, safest ways to lower cholesterol naturally.
Mm-hmm. How about diet? How about changing the diet from...
the number one cause of cholesterol excess is carbohydrates. It's not fat. Mm-hmm. It's not meat. It is starch and sugar. That's simple.
Okay. All right. So someone with high cholesterol, absolute massive reduction in carbohydrates and eliminate sugar?
That's the rule. And add less than granules. Less than granules are good not only for helping to lower cholesterol, but for helping memory. So they have a double whammy effect, even in normal, healthy people. And then the TMG is probably the single best of the cholesterol-lowering supplements.
Dr. Shealy, here's something that I've noticed. My mom meets with some of the seniors at the senior center in our little hamlet. They get together once a week and they socialize and they love their sweets. When I say sweets, I mean sugar. They love sugar. Now, as a person gets older, is there a natural tendency for a person to want more sugar?
I don't know. Sugar is somewhat addicting, and I don't know any way except avoiding it. I mean, it requires willpower.
Okay. But what I'm asking is, but do you think as we get older, we have a natural desire for more sugar? Is that possible? Because it seems like that's the case.
I'm sure it's possible. Whether that is an absolute truth, I think the main reason for that is the food supply has been so contaminated with all kinds of artificial and other sweetness. You know, interesting, just the sweet taste, even of an artificial sweetener, actually drives the control center, the hypothalamus, to want more sweet. So if you've been exposed to increasing fructose, that's the most common one, I think, in our food supply. It's put into all kinds of processed foods. Then that builds the internal desire or need or feeling of need for more sweet. So I don't think it's natural, but I think it is conditioned by our current evil empire of the food industry.
When we get back, I'd like to ask you, can we go cold turkey and just eliminate sweets? We'll be right back. Dr. Norman Shealy is with us, class. If you'd like to go to his website, normshealy.com, NORMSHEALY.com, and there you can peruse the optimal health recommendations that Dr. Shealy has put together. And also, that's the location for the bliss oils, the books, the supplements, and so forth. Especially one of my favorites is the youth formula, which I take multiple times per day. That is a vitamin C and MSM supplement that I take literally multiple times per day, and I highly recommend it. Very inexpensive, and you may want to purchase yours, as do I. Dr. Shealy, I want to mention something before we talk about going cold turkey with sweets, and that is when I had a job back in the 1980s, and I worked at the bank. If someone did something really extraordinary, the Human Resources Department would give them an 8.5 by 11 stamped. It's like a rubber stamp, but 8.5 by 11 on a piece of paper, and it would say "attaboy" or "attagirl." That would be if you did something extraordinary. We used to call those Gentile raises. So instead of getting a raise, you got, for doing something extraordinary, you got this attaboy or attagirl certificate. Well, our class deserves one of those because we had a problem with the telephone listen line. And I sent emails to Zeno Radio, and I didn't get it fixed. I got a response that we're working on it, but I didn't get it fixed. So I put out the message to our broadcast classroom, would you mind sending this email to Zeno Radio? I gave the email address, and wouldn't you know it, it's fixed. So, class, y'all get attaboys and attagirls for taking care of that. and I really appreciate that. And it kind of reminds me, Dr. Shealy, of being called in the front office of that radio station in Springfield, where you do broadcast, and I used to broadcast, and I used to give out the city manager's telephone number and tell our listeners to call him up and tell him he's fired for putting fluoride in the water. And I got I got commanded to appear in the front office, and they said, Vinny, knock it off. Because the city managers. Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, the manager of that radio station is either brainwashed or otherwise to believe that city utilities has some integrity. Now, to me, any utility that puts fluoride in your water is evil. That's the best thing I can say about them. They're poisoning your brain.
Yeah. Well, I got called in there, and they told me to knock off giving out his telephone number because we were tying up the switchboard in Springfield, Missouri, with people demanding to talk to Greg Burris, who was the manager and still is the manager. So the moral of the story is you make a lot of noise, you make waves, you get fired. Not him, me. And so, but that's okay. That's okay. So we got the message out, and we printed up bumper stickers, and we said, fire Greg Burris with his phone number. And, but, we did get the message out, but we still have fluoride in the water. And one of the most difficult things to do. And the only attempt that, well, not the only, there are a couple of things that I've tried to do that I've been unsuccessful. Now there are 3 of them, but actually 4 of them. But getting fluoride out of the water is one, running for school board is another, and running for the board of directors of the electric cooperative twice. That's 2 more. So that's 4 things I've been unsuccessful with. But other things that we've been successful in accomplishing here at USA Prepares, like when the city of Orlando would fine people for having a garden in their front yard. We got that stopped. And we got BMW to reverse their position on their Z sports car that had electronic steering that had all kinds of problems, and they charged their customers $6,000 to fix it. Well, we got that fixed too. But those are just a couple of things that we've been successful. But, yeah, we've been unsuccessful as well. Cold turkey, Dr. Shealy. Quitting sugar and sweets cold turkey. Is that safe or not safe?
Well, here's the way I recommend it. I recommend that they start immediately on the trimethylglycine, 2,000 milligrams with each meal, and 2 heaping tablespoons of lecithin granules twice a day. The day they start that, they can either cut the statin in half if they can. If they can't, go to every other day for 1 week. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the first week, if they've cut it in half, then after the first week, they cut it out totally. So it's a pretty rapid weaning, which I think is okay because the TMG and the lecithin kick in quickly.
Okay. How about in the cessation of sweets? The person who has become a sugaraholic.
Now, that one is more difficult because it is truly an addiction as bad as opioids. There, I use a Chinese herb, and there are several that can help you with that. But Gymnema sylvestre, Gymnema sylvestre, 375 milligrams, 2 to 3 times a day will often cut the craving very rapidly. Now, if it still doesn't work after the first few days, open one of the capsules and put just a tiny few grains of the Gymnema on the tongue. Mm-hmm. It blocks all ability to taste any sweet whatsoever for 3 to 4 hours. Mm-hmm. And that can speed up the process of weaning yourself from sugar.
Mm-hmm. One of our students let me know that he tried that, and he said it absolutely works, putting that on your tongue. Gymnema sylvestre. Dr. Shealy, I was reading a story about this guy. He's a big boy, 300 plus pounds, and he had some surgery, gastric bypass type surgery, and we've talked about that, and I'd love to hear your comments on that again. And so he became a lot smaller, but what he had was a lot of hanging skin. So when someone goes from, typically normal body build to a really big boy or big girl, and then opts to lose weight really quickly through one of these, I guess I would consider dangerous procedures, gastric bypass, banding or stomach stapling or whatever method we're talking about, then ends up with a lot of hanging skin. What happens to that hanging skin? Does it disappear over time? Does it tighten up over time? Or are they left with, these hanging empty bags of skin?
I have a feeling it depends on how long it's been stretched, but I don't know that. But most people who've lost, let's say, 50 pounds of weight or more are going to have some hanging skin.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right. What do you think about gastric bypass, stomach stapling, banding? What are your thoughts on that?
Insanity.
Mm-hmm.
Have I answered that adequately?
Yeah.
I think the surgeon and the patients are being deluded by the surgeons who I consider assaulting the person. I think that is one of the most dangerous, stupid things ever done in the medical profession.
I know a guy that opted for it. He was a pretty big boy. He was a really big boy. And he decided he was going to be half the guy he used to be, and he had the procedure done. And he lost a lot of weight. He went down to about 250 pounds from darn close to, from double that, roughly double that, 400 plus to 200 plus, very, very rapidly. And what he found out was that, he couldn't eat regular meals. He couldn't eat 3 times a day. He had to have lots of small meals. And then he couldn't have things that he liked. Now, I'm not saying this is good for you, but he liked to have soda, and he found out he couldn't have soda. He wasn't told this before. He found out this after. And he was really kind of disappointed because he thought then, he could have lost that weight by eating less instead of having 2 breakfasts, 2 lunches, 2 dinners, and 2, before bedtime big snacks. He could have cut down to, a single meal 3 times a day and exercised a little bit more and lost weight that way. Would that have worked, Dr. Shealy? Just, reducing consumption and being more careful about what a person eats?
Oh, absolutely. No question about it. Halitosis is better than no breath at all. Any decrease in caloric intake will help if you stick with it.
All right. Well, let me ask you this. Overall, in people that you've seen for your entire practice of decades, would you say that people who are overweight are less healthy than people who are of the body mass?
Unequivocally. Excess weight is associated, like everything else, with low oxytocin, which means that it is associated with an increase in cancer, an increase in heart disease, an increase in diabetes, an increase in everything, depression. And so obesity is actually the number one in this country, the number one cause of, quote, premature death. There's an article a couple of 3 years ago called Premature Death, and the number one cause is obesity.
Yeah. And I know that you're not obese, I'm not, Mrs. Finelli's not. The people who are paying attention to their health are generally not obese. At least that's what I'm seeing.
I would literally quit eating totally if I had to quit. I would fast for a month if I had to lose weight.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I was reading a story about this woman who, when she was younger, liked instant tanning. So she would get on the tanning bed, and she would overdo the tanning bed, and she would deliberately burn her skin for a deeper, darker tan. She ended up with really serious health problems, actually got cancer as a result of it. Can we talk about that when we come back? What your thoughts are on tanning? Dr. Norman Shealy's with us, class. His website, normshealy.com, normshealy.com. Dr. Shealy, for someone who might be coming to the Springfield, Missouri village and who would want to visit with you at your clinic, what number should they call?
417-351-5221.
Okay, please repeat that.
417-351-5221.
Okay, class, 417-351-5221. That's the number to call during normal business hours in Springfield, Missouri. Yes. Mm-hmm.
That reminds me, since I won't be here next week, I would like to let our listeners know that December 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, we have visiting a spiritual healer who is highly recommended by one of my students, long-term students, as an excellent healer. She has all kinds of accolades of how good she is. Kimberly Meredith is going to be here, and people can see her for the usual spiritual healing, which is most of the time just touching or laying on of hands at the very least, and they can make an appointment at no charge to see this healer December 1st, 2nd, 3rd, or 4th.
That's Kimberly Meredith, December 1, 2, 3, and 4 in Springfield, Missouri at your clinic, correct?
That is correct. We're actually working on Saturday and Sunday in order to work people in.
Mm-hmm. And my understanding is that I'll have a chance to meet her as well.
Indeed. I want you to, especially. You're the top of my list of people I want to be sure we can add her. You know, I want to mention to you, I believe that what true spiritual healers do is focus scalar energy. Because I have 200 cases of EEGs, electroencephalograms, in which a healer from a distance up to 1,000 or 800 miles away can change your EEG within seconds. Now, in order to change the EEG within seconds, it has to be scalar energy. Nothing else moves that fast.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'm really, really looking forward to it. I really am. And I had two experiences with a medical intuitive, Kay Randall Kay. And literally, she had never met me. And through the telephone conversation with Dr. Shealy, she hit the nail on the head twice. 2 home runs. Absolutely well done. And she has been on the air with us, Kay Randall Kay. Absolutely, there is something to it. There's no question in my mind, Dr. Shealy. So I'm looking forward to that. So this woman decided that she would deliberately burn herself for a better tan under tanning lights. So 4 decades ago, she repeatedly burned herself, and now she's ended up with cancer. And she's had, here's what the article says. She's needed 15 grueling procedures to cut away her facial tumors. She believes her cancer was caused by the use of tanning beds 4 decades ago. Doctors repeatedly cut away bigger and bigger chunks of her face, even shaving away portions of her cheekbone as the tumor went deeper. And stage 4 cancer has spread to her lungs, et cetera, et cetera. So, Dr. Shealy, do you think that this is true? I believe it's true, that this is dangerous stuff.
I mean, in addition to ultraviolet itself, from the sun doing this, when you do a tanning bed, you get not only the ultraviolet light, but you get the extra 60 cycle stuff, which probably makes it even worse than sunlight burns.
Right, and you've got fluorescent type tubes pressed against your body with the fluorescent.
Oh, yeah. Not bright.
Yes, including the ballasts and the 60 cycles, as you're talking about, right there. I don't think it's a good idea at all. As a matter of fact,
Nope.
Dr. Shealy, ultraviolet light is used to kill bacteria in water. Just the bacteria in water passing near ultraviolet light destroys the bacteria, literally blasts it apart. So, yeah, pretty dangerous stuff. Dr. Shealy, thanks so much for being with us today.
Hey, always great. Have a good one.